We are in week 16. We're talking starts, sits, and maybe some sleepers here for your fantasy playoffs. Let's jump into it. Welcome back to the Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jono, and today I'm bringing you Week 16 slate for starts, sits, and sleepers. We are into the second round of the fantasy football playoffs. For those of you who have a manager, like I said, or a commissioner, like I said before, that has a Week 18 championship, and this is the first round of playoffs, that's a problem that needs to change next year or leave that league. But let's talk here. There's a couple new changes to this week's slate in terms of not the games, but the players. Two teams are starting new quarterbacks today. DTR for the Browns and Michael Penix Jr., the rookie, will be starting for the Falcons. They have benched Kirk Cousins for what my guess would be the remainder of the season. He still carries a steep cost going into next year, but it is a much more palatable cost for a team if they want to try and get him from the Falcons or trade him from the Falcons. So let's jump into things. Beforehand, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit that notification button. When we talk about starts and sits here, drop a comment if you have any questions on who you think you should start in your lineup. This is time to split hairs and be nitpicky, but at the end of the day, start your studs. They got you here. Unless you've got, there isn't a defense out there that's absolutely stopping somebody in their tracks, whether it be the run game or the pass game, so bad that they're not worthy of starting just because they're a stud. I get it if you're two equal playing, a flex position receiver or running back or something like that. I get that. But in terms of your studs, you should not be wavering or should not be questioning who you have on your team. So let's jump off on the Thursday night matchup. This is the divisional matchup between the Broncos and the Chargers. It's in L.A. Chargers 3-point favorites, a 42.5 over under on ESPN Bet here. The one thing I will say is the Chargers have been playing horrible as of late. Their defense has not been able to stop good teams. Denver has been playing a lot better on offense, and their defense has been more shut down too. So this could be either a matchup that goes and hits the under, whether Chargers score or don't score, or this could be one of those ones that just edges over top of the over. But at the end of the day, I think Denver could end up beating LA here. Now, this is huge implications for playoffs in the NFL for the Cincinnati Bengals. In the case they need LA to lose out because they lose the tiebreaker with the Chargers if they end up tying record-wise, and Cincinnati would have to win out in that situation and be 9-8 versus the Chargers. If they lose out and don't win a single game, then they would, for sure, Cincinnati would jump them if they won out. But if they win one game, which they have a fairly favorable rest of the season schedule, then they lose out on that. Now, Denver loses out. They lose this game today. They do play Cincinnati next week, and that would have huge implications. And then Denver would have to win the final game of the season, which I want to say it's Kansas City, but I can't remember off the top of my head. And if that's the case, Cincinnati would jump them in a tiebreaker with the head-to-head schedule. So a lot of implications in this game. But let's jump into our starts and sits. I don't love Justin Herbert in this one this week. Patrick Surtain is playing really well. Ladd McConkey, if he gets shut down, Quentin Johnston's too hot or cold for me to be a game changer. We've already seen Josh Palmer not be able to get it done. And with the running game so beat up, there's nobody that's just taking chunk yardage away. And Denver's been pretty good against the run as well. On the other side of the ball, in this game, you're starting Ladd McConkey. That's all I would say. But I would kind of demote him to a flex play, in my opinion here, just because it may not be on a short week favorable matchup for him, especially if Surtain starts to follow him around a little bit. On the Denver side of the ball, I'm not touching the running game here. Really, it comes down to Bo Nix could be a decent matchup for him, but I would lean more towards just being the really only startable guy from this game that I like is going to be Courtland Sutton. He's one of the top receivers in the game right now, top receivers in fantasy football. He's going to get opportunities, and there's no shutdown corner in LA. The Chargers just play good defense in general. And Bo Nix has looked pretty good here and there for the most part. And he could use his legs. So that's where I'm at with this game. It's more of a fun football fan type of game, defensive matchup, than it is a fantasy matchup per se. Moving on to the next game, which has a smaller over-under. Saturday the 21st, we have two matchups, Saturday football. We have Houston at Kansas City to start at 1 o'clock. 41.5 over-under, Kansas City favored by 3. This may change. That line could possibly change a little bit depending upon if it's 100% Pat Mahomes playing, which it looks like he's going to tough it out. But on the let's start with the Houston side of the ball here. C.J. Stroud has not been playing well. This is going to be a tough defense for him to face. You're starting Mixon, but he could disappoint in back-to-back weeks. And that's because Kansas City's got a great rush defense here, and Spagnuolo's awesome at scheming things. You're starting Nico Collins as well because he is the shining light, the one person on that Houston wide receiver squad that's going to make a difference. And that's about all I'm feeling comfortable with coming out of Houston. This has just been a disappointing season for them, as well as disappointing fantasy season if you had those players. On the Kansas City side of the ball, Pacheco is still splitting right now, and rightfully so. I mean, it makes sense coming off an injury that he had, but it makes it very difficult to have confidence in starting him when you know that they have not been clearly running the ball heavily through him like they had in the past. And maybe that changes with Pat Mahomes' injury, and I wouldn't be surprised, but we know Houston gets torched through the air and not as much on the ground. And so I kind of like DeAndre Hopkins this week. And I do like the tandem of the tight ends, both in Noah Gray and Travis Kelce. So I'd be comfortable starting them in my lineups. More Kelce than Gray because Gray is more touchdown dependent. Kelce's going to get the targets and yardage, especially in PPR. And then DeAndre Hopkins I do like in here. With the injuries they have at the wide receiver spot, I know Xavier Worthy's been working into the run game. That may be another fun one for you to try. But if he doesn't score that touchdown on the run game, you are sorely disappointed in his output. And I know we were in Hopkins this past week, but he is the number one wide receiver there right now. Next game being Pittsburgh at Baltimore. This is kind of the game of the week situation here. We've got Pittsburgh, who I believe has clinched a playoff spot or with their record so far, or does if with a win this week and a loss with one of the other teams. But they can clinch the division with a victory over Baltimore here. And the Baltimore 6.5-point favorites, a 44.5-point over/under. It's in Baltimore. We saw this past earlier in the season. This game was tight in Pittsburgh. It was a close-scoring game. They upset Baltimore. I just think, to me, one of those situations here, you could see another low-scoring game. Both defenses starting to tighten up as the season comes towards a close. So you like to see that in terms of if you're a fan of one of these two teams. But if you are a fantasy football player, you don't love the fact that, hey, this could end up being another tight game. It was 18-16 victory earlier in the season. So looking at it here, I don't expect it to be that low because both teams are scoring more points. You're starting Lamar. You're starting Derrick Henry. You can't be upset, though, if you see another output like Henry had this past week. I don't suspect Lamar Jackson being held to 18 points, but I don't see him throwing up 5 touchdowns either. We do know that the Baltimore secondary is pretty bad, so I like starting Russell Wilson on the Steelers side of the ball. Najee is going to have a tough day. I do like Jaylen Warren with what he does out the backfield, but if he can't hold on to the ball, we'll see what ends up happening there. You got to keep an eye on George Pickens. If George Pickens plays, that boosts that offense a little bit. If he does not play, I think this offense may struggle, and I think Freiermuth may be a benefactor in the red zone if they get there at that point. And I think Jaylen Warren out the backfield will help too as well. On the Baltimore receiving side of the ball, I like Mark Andrews. He's been getting targeted, especially in the end zone, and I like RASHOD Bateman in this one too as well. I think Zay Flowers, we'll see if he gets the treatment of Joey Porter. I could see Bateman maybe getting it based on this past week, but Bateman isn't really a threat to most teams in their game planning because Zay Flowers is the one who gets open. He's the one who's flying all over the field. I'd be more scheming to try and shut him down and let them try and beat you on a deep pass with Bateman. But I like Bateman, and I do like Flowers here. To me, they're both flex plays. Flowers hasn't shown me enough on a consistent basis to make him a wide receiver 2, and definitely not a wide receiver 1. And Bateman the same way. It's like they can have these blow-up games, multi-touchdown games, 100-yard games on spot plays. But this is going to be a hard-fought game that Baltimore wants to win in their home city. Kicking off Sunday's matchups, we'll start with my New York Giants here in Georgia playing the Atlanta Falcons. There's a chance I'm going to try and go to this game. We'll see. It's kind of going to be a dumpster fire of a game. But we do have Michael Penix starting for the Atlanta Falcons. And let's dive in real quick to what that could mean for this team. I don't know. Honestly, I think at the end of the day, we're looking at maybe similar to what Kirk Cousins did this previous game, where he finally started to bounce back. He did throw a touchdown pass. I just don't see Michael Penix coming in and all of a sudden take this team to the promised land. The New York Giants defense is not horrible on the run game or horrible in the pass game overall. They've been able to, stifle some teams and shorten them, and then keep people from scoring at times. But they're not getting blown out every single week, and not getting scored 30, 40 points by mediocre offenses. So I don't suspect Michael Penix having this awesome game. Now they are out Dexter Lawrence, Tyler Nubin, like you name it. The defense is banged up for the Giants. So I'm probably going to start Bijan Robinson here for sure. That's where I'd be okay flexing Algier if you need to. I'm not starting Michael Penix. And I'd probably go with Drake London just because of the touchdown potential there. But again, there's some question marks. I mean, this is going to be the first game for Penix. First time he's taking first-team reps. We'll see where the timing is. We'll see where his throws are. This game is faster than the college game. He doesn't have Odunze and Polk and McMillan all in his squad like he did at Washington last year. So New York, I really don't. For the sake of being a Giants fan, I want the number 1 pick. I don't want New York coming out on top of this game, but I think it's going to be a little bit closer than the 8.5-point favored Atlanta Falcons at home. It's a 42.5-point over-under. The New York Giants side of the ball, Tracy and Neighbors, week-to-week basis are the only two that are worthy of starts. We'll see who's the quarterback here. Weirdly enough, I feel like Boyle was probably better for the team than DeVito. And if there's any question of DeVito, I think they go Boyle, and we already know that Locke, he can't get it done either. Malik Neighbors finally looked like he had some more effort in this game for the first time in a while, which I like to see. He posted up over 80 yards, and he got the garbage time touchdown. But I could see him going for another 12 to 15 targets, double-digit catches, break the record for the Giants as a rookie, and then also fall into the end zone against this Falcons defense. Because I don't think the Falcons are going to have as big of a cakewalk as they did against the Raiders this past week. They tried. The Falcons took away Brock Bowers. I don't think you're going to have the ability to take away Malik Neighbors. He's too good of a wide receiver there. And Tyrone Tracy's a pretty good running back too. They just had no running game in Las Vegas this past week. So those are my starts and sits for that game. Moving on to Detroit and Chicago. Big game here too as well, because Detroit just coming off a loss to Buffalo, losing David Montgomery on top of that. They're in Chicago, an outdoor game. Goff does not play well outdoors at all this season. However, Chicago is terrible against the run right now, and I think this could be a big Jahmyr Gibbs game. So fire him up as a top 5 play at the running back position this week. You like Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you're looking for a sleeper flyer pick, you're in a deep league and you got some injuries and you're somehow still in it, you could throw in a Tim Patrick play here. The guy's been reaching the end zone. He's been pulling the Nick Westbrook-Akine here and scoring when he's playing these games. But besides that, you're starting Sam Laporta because he's been coming on a little bit as of late. I'm sitting Jameson Williams, and really it's Amon-Ra, Gibbs, Laporta, and if you've got to start Goff because he's been playing lights out. However, again, it's a tough Chicago defense at times. It wasn't like the Vikings, were able to score all over them like crazy, and the Detroit defense in the passing side of it, they can't stop anything, and we saw that this past week. So, and they couldn't stop the run against James Cook, and so give me a little bit of the Chicago side of the ball. I like Keenan Allen again this week and DJ Moore. I still have struggling to start Odunze. I know he had the 2-touchdown game a couple weeks ago, but he is kind of an afterthought. They're scheming him plays here and there, but when push comes to shove and pressure's on Caleb Williams, you see what he can do with Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's still Keenan Allen. He still gets open, and then they're gonna give their big wide receiver the ball as much as they can. One of the great things that I listen to coaches talk about these big-time wide receivers and playmakers, you see a trend difference in games here now than you saw about 10 years ago when running backs were your star-studded players. But with these big-time wide receivers like DJ Moore's and these high-contract players, you're paying them the money and they want the ball. So at the end of the day, these diva wide receivers are going to get the ball. And sometimes you see it on the first play, and sometimes you see it throughout the first drive to just get them going, get their confidence, get them excited to be in the game. And I think that's the mistake the Giants have played this year with Neighbors, is not getting the ball to the second half. That's where I think his lack of effort has come in, and they finally started getting the ball early this past week. I think you see the same thing with DJ Moore here. I could consider Caleb Williams being a streamer here, just because of how bad Detroit's defense has been. It's in Chicago. It's a divisional game. Anything can happen here. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Detroit's only 6.5-point favorites over Chicago. It's a 47.5 point slate here, which I believe is the third highest or second highest of the weekend. So that just goes to show you that I think they like Detroit favored here. However, it's not favored by that much because of the home field advantage for Chicago. Moving on to Cleveland at Cincinnati. Cincinnati, again, could be mathematically eliminated this week. I don't believe it's going to happen, but they could. And you've got Cincinnati Bengals at home, 7.5-point favorites over top of the Cleveland Browns, the Battle of Ohio. You're starting your studs. You've got Chase, Higgins, Chase Brown, Burrow. Enough. Like, there's no questions. You're playing these guys unless all of a sudden they pull up some 20-mile-per-hour winds and snow, and then I'm rethinking that decision. But on the Cleveland side of the ball, you're looking at DTR as the starter there. That downgrades Jerry Jeudy, but you've got to still keep him in. He's been playing amazing football right now, and you've probably have him as your flex anyway. So throw him in there. Not trusting the rest of the receiver group here. We know DTR tends to scramble too as well. Njoku is out. I don't remember if they put Njoku. Did he go to IR? Regardless, if Njoku is out, then I don't. It's not like I love the options after that. But if Njoku's in, I'd like DTR in too as well. Or I like that with DTR. Not starting Thompson Robinson at the quarterback position. And I do like Jerome Ford here. I think Jerome Ford can do a little bit on the ground. We saw him this previous season with the injury to Nick Chubb early on last season. He was able to have some 100-yard games, good out the backfield, especially in PPR. So fire him up and feel comfortable that he's going to get enough touches in your flex to do something for you. Tennessee at Indianapolis. This is a tough one here. It's a divisional matchup. Obviously, we're looking at the Colts on the outside looking into the playoffs. Indy's favorite 3.5 at home. 42.5 over under. Tennessee's got a decent defense. Indianapolis has a bad offense. I could see them shutting down Jonathan Taylor a little bit. and it's going to be on Anthony Richardson's shoulders to get the job done. I think Mason Rudolph is probably going to start here in Tennessee again this season, which should help out because less turnovers. I don't know how much it helps out after that, but less turnovers. So to me, I know it probably stinks thinking about starting Calvin Ridley, but he's the number one pass catcher there. If Pollard goes, I like Pollard. If Pollard doesn't go, I really like Tajay Spears, but I'll start both of them here against this Indianapolis defense because you're starting them both as a running back 2 or a flex play anyway. On the Indianapolis side of the ball, I like Jonathan Taylor. You got to start him because you probably draft him as your number 1 running back or number 2. He could get stopped. Hopefully he doesn't drop the ball going into the end zone again. Josh Downs, again, led the team, not by much in terms of yardage, but led the team in targets at least. And I think I'm going to do the same thing here this week is throw Josh Downs out there. Now, Anthony Richardson, the conundrum here is, do I start him? Because he's not putting up flashy numbers for you in terms of yardage and touchdowns, but what he could do with his legs makes him a fantasy football kind of cheat code. So I'm okay with starting him here because we've seen quarterbacks have success against Tennessee as of late. So in my opinion, if you've got him and you're going back and forth between him and Kyler Murray, even Kyler Murray's got a good matchup, or you're talking about a situation where it's him or Tua, and Tua, the way he's playing San Francisco, I could see it being a coin, flip of a coin here, and I wouldn't mind if that is the route you went. LA versus the Jets. The Rams at the Jets. The Rams are cruise control right now with the way they're going, and the Jets coming off a big-time win. Rams are favored as the away team, 3 points at a 46.5 here. You're firing up Kyron Williams. Don't overthink the Cooper Kupp goose egg. Start him, start Puka. And Matt Stafford is an interesting play here too because we've seen the Jets, I think they're frauds on the defensive side of the ball. Don't look at the matchups, and the New York Jets are ranked this against this position. It's playoffs time, man, and the Jets are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. The Rams are going to try and put their foot on the gas and put the Jets out of misery to lock themselves into their playoff. So I like those guys there. On the Jets side of the ball, I do like how Aaron Rodgers has been playing in back-to-back weeks. Let's throw him back in there with Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. And Breece Hall is going to be tough for you to afford to sit. But if he has a full week of practice here and decides to go again, I don't mind playing him. But this LA defense has been tough as of late on some of these running backs. So don't expect a ton from the New York team, but you didn't make the playoffs because of, maybe you did make the playoffs because of the New York Jets past 2 weeks, but you may have made it to this round because of the New York Jets this previous week, but you didn't win games during the season because of Devontae Adams and all those guys. You're benefiting now on the tail end of the season with their play. Philadelphia at Washington. 1 o'clock game. Philly away team favorites at 3.5 at a 45.5 over under, which is interesting to me that it's lower than the Jets-Rams game and lower than the Detroit-Chicago game, and these offenses have been able to score. Last time we watched this game, Saquon Barkley had a fantastic game against them. I expect a little bit of the same. Now that this team showed that they could pass the ball too, I don't know if they just had to get it out of their system or if Saquon was shaken up a little bit and the team was like, you know what, let's not try and if we can handle the pass game and get ahead of the game this past week, we don't have to try and run him like crazy. We don't want him to get hurt or anything like that. So good thing is there's a good chance they bring Saquon back because this is a must-win game for Philadelphia. They win this, they clinch the division and their playoff berth, and they can still work their way into the number 1. I think they lose a tiebreaker with Detroit. However, there's a good chance that if Detroit loses one of their final games, especially against Minnesota, and Minnesota loses a game and Philly wins out, Philly gets the number 1 seed in the bye. So Philadelphia is not going to take their foot off the gas unless they can't get the bye week, in my opinion. But they wouldn't know that until week 18. So they've got 2 weeks that they're going to try and win here. So it's good for fantasy football and good for fantasy championships. So you're starting Saquon, you're starting Devonta Smith, you're starting A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. On the Washington side of the ball, Brian Thomas, you're going to have to start because of the volume play, but it's not going to be great here in Philly. Jaden Daniels I like here in this game, and Terry McLaurin. Outside of that, with injuries left and right to the other receivers and concussion for Zach Ertz, I think those are the only two that you're comfortable playing in your playoff spot. Let's just put it that way. Arizona at Carolina. Last 1 o'clock game here. Arizona favored at 4.5 at a 46.5 over-under line, and that is in Carolina. For the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray's got what should be a good matchup here. However, he's been playing bad football. So if there is somebody that you like a little bit better, if you have Darnold and Kyler, I'm going Darnold. If you've got Stafford and Kyler, maybe I feel more comfortable with Stafford. And Richardson and Kyler, that's kind of a toss-up here or there. But Kyler hasn't been running the ball much, and Richardson has, so that he's got a leg up there on him. So to me, Marvin Harrison, you got to start here and just grit your teeth the whole game through and hoping that he starts getting the targets and the open chances. With the running game, James Conner is probably the best offensive weapon they have here, and Trey McBride is another start for me too. On the Carolina side of the ball, Adam Thielen I like here, and Chuba Hubbard. Those are the only two that are viable options to me on a week-by-week basis. I guess, you can talk about Coker and any of these other guys and getting big playability, but you need the big play for these guys to show up versus Thielen's a volume play, Chuba's a volume play. I'd stick with those guys. Minnesota at Seattle. This game is exciting. Seattle possibly without Geno Smith, and even if he's playing with Geno Smith, it's a hobbled Geno Smith. You got Minnesota favored by 3 at a 42 over-under in Seattle. Minnesota side of the ball, I like Darnold here. You're playing Jefferson. You're playing Hawkinson. You're playing Addison. And you're playing Aaron Jones. Simple. Now, didn't love what I saw this past game with Aaron Jones on Monday night, where he was in for a lot of the game, and then they were taking him out, and you saw some Cam Akers, but still, Aaron Jones is a running back too for this team, and he's going to have a good opportunity here. On the Seattle side of the ball, JSN and Charbonnet are the only two ones I'm comfortable with. I mean, especially if you don't have if you have Sam Howell going out there and it's not Geno Smith. I don't love DK Metcalf. Even with Geno Smith, I don't love DK Metcalf. I think they try and stick to the run, which is Minnesota's bread and butter and stopping right now. So, again, JSN's a big play guy. I think that's where they're going to try and get the ball. I think they're going to make mistakes. I don't think this is going to be as close of a game as they think, and I think Minnesota's going to run away with it. They're trying to win this thing, win their division, get to the number 1 seed, get the bye, and prove everybody wrong here, and I think they can do it. New England at Buffalo is the next game. This divisional game is kind of a nothing one here. It's in Buffalo. Buffalo's 14-point favorites, 46.5 over-under. I don't think New England scores a lot here at all. In terms of who I like from New England, now Buffalo's not the best against the run. They have been splitting carries between Ramondre and Gibson, but you can, afford to throw Ramondre in unless you made one of these late game additions or drafted somebody like Chase Brown later on. You may not be able to afford to sit Ramondre for a matchup that's better. I'm not starting Drake May. I'm not starting any of the receivers out here. Hunter Henry has been splitting with Hooper a lot, but Hunter Henry would be somebody that would be interested in streaming at the tight end position if you have been throwing back in there, because they're going to need to throw the ball anyway. On the Buffalo side of the ball, James Cook coming off the 2-touchdown, 107-yard game performance he had. I think you could probably feel comfortable throwing him back in there, especially in a game like this. Now, if Buffalo gets up big early and has a couple big turnovers for maybe a touchdown, or they get in short fields and Josh Allen scores, and then all of a sudden we're looking at a 28-0 game, I don't know. You may see a little more Ray Davis, and that's the one thing that makes me nervous about Cook here. But you got to hope he gets it done early on, which he's done in the past at a couple of these blowout wins. Josh Allen, you're starting, and you are Amari Cooper, goose egg, Keon Coleman, deep shots. Both tight ends got peppered with targets. It was a big, high-flying offensive game against Detroit. I just don't know who I trust outside of those running backs. I think they're going to play more normal football and not have to be as creative as they were against Detroit and try and score on big chunk plays. I think they're just going to play normal football here. So I could see wanting to take a shot at one of these guys because I think they're going to score a lot. And if I would throw Kincaid back out there. I'd take a flex play on Coleman maybe. And I think I'd throw Cooper back out there as a flex, wide receiver 2 flex option. But if you have better opportunities where you can get more target share, then I would go that route. Jacksonville at Las Vegas, should have been the battle of who wants the number 1 overall pick, but Jacksonville went and won a game. But I think Jacksonville is going to win this one. The line is even right now at 39.5, and that's in Las Vegas, so that's not great for Vegas. However, Vegas did kind of shut down. Not that it was difficult to shut down Kirk Cousins right now, but shut down the Falcons. Jacksonville has been able to hang in on games too as well and score points with Brian Thomas Jr. So on the Jacksonville side of the ball, you're playing Brian Thomas Jr. You can stream Brenton Smart here, I think. He had 12 targets, 11 catches, over 70 yards. I think he could get against a weak defense against the tight end. You can throw him out there as a streamable option. In terms of who you stream him over, I don't know. It depends on you think. Drop a comment. Let us know, and I could give you my opinion. I don't suspect 12 targets again here because I do think the running game will be able to take off a little bit for Jacksonville, especially with Max Crosby being hurt and out for the season. On the Las Vegas side of the ball, Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers are the only two I'd be interested in starting here. And they're both downgraded based on the quarterback play here. So, but if Aiden O'Connell comes back, there's a chance that this Vegas team could beat Jacksonville. If that's the case, hallelujah, New York Giants fans, with that number 1 pick. But that being said, those are still the only 2 guys I'm playing, even if Aiden O'Connell is there, because we did see Sincere McCormick leave with an ankle injury, and I doubt he plays this week. San Francisco at Miami is the last afternoon game. Miami is the favorited by 1.5 points at home, 44.5 over under. The one thing about this game here, San Francisco at Miami, is San Francisco's got a chip on their shoulder. They got something to prove. Miami, on the other hand, is just treading water and fighting for their life with still an outside chance at the playoffs. Tyreek Hill's not playing good football. Tua played terrible football against the Texans this past week. You saw an injury to Waddle. It looked real bad, and then they came back and said that he's day-to-day, could possibly play this week. I still downgrade him on his play, even if he does play this week, just because it's a knee injury regardless, and he's built for running and for speed. I don't feel comfortable starting him. I think San Francisco is going to try and get at the ball. Their defense beefed up this past week. So we'll see where Greenlaw is. If Greenlaw is playing, this is a really good defense against the running back position. And if he's not playing, we saw what happens when you take the foot off the gas on the defensive side with those linebackers. For Hafunga's in there. He's playing well. And Nick Bosa's back in. This could be a tough day for Miami, to be honest with you. On the San Francisco side of the ball, I do like Isaac Guerrero in this game, and they're going to establish the run. We know that. I can't trust Deebo Samuel any more than I could throw him, and I think really Kittle's the big one to play. I think Juwan Jennings has a bounce-back game here too as well. Brock Purdy, not one of my favorite starts here. He's just efficient, and if they score some touchdowns, he'll be good, but there's better opportunities out there for some quarterbacks at the same caliber. Tampa Bay at Dallas, the first primetime game on Sunday night. Tampa Bay's favored at Dallas at 4 points at 48.5 over under. Fire up Baker Mayfield here. I play him over Purdy for sure. Fire up Mike Evans. Flex streamable start is McMillan if you are in kind of a pickle there. And then I love Bucky Irving, and you could even throw Rachaad White as a flex play, but I like Bucky Irving as RB2. He looks better at running the ball, and he's going to be 1 week healthier from previous injury. On the Dallas side of the ball, I'd play Rico Dowdle. It is a tougher matchup for him here, but I like it. And then CeeDee Lamb has been playing fantastic. It's tough to trust the tight ends here, even though they're good now that there's 2 of them with Ferguson coming back. And then they're going to sprinkle in some catches to Cooks or Turpin or anybody, and you're never going to know who to play. I think you just start your studs in terms of Dowdle and in terms of CeeDee Lamb. On the final game of the weekend, New Orleans Saints at Green Bay. Green Bay favored at Lambeau, 14 points on a 42 under, and I think New Orleans is just so beat up. There's a chance they don't have Kamara in this game. They already lost Taysom Hill. They already lost Derek Carr. They already lost Rashid Shaheed. I mean, they're throwing to Foster Moreau and Juwan Johnson now. That's about it. And Kendre Miller looked like he was decent enough, but this could be a tough game for him here. I'd still fire him up as a flex play. I don't feel confident enough as an RB2. And you can throw Juwan Jennings or more Juwan Jennings. I know Moreau got the touchdown, but more Juwan Jennings as a streamable option as a tight end. But there's better ones out there like Brenton Strange that I'd rather put out as a volume play. On the Green Bay side of the ball, ride the Josh Jacobs train to the championship. Jordan Love has been good enough. Jaden Reed hasn't been himself. Romeo Doubs was. It's the same thing we talked about earlier. They're not consistent enough through the passing game like you see from like Cincinnati, where you feel confident playing 2 of these wide receivers or even one of them on a consistent basis. Doubs had the 2 touchdowns. In past games, Jaden Reed gets the touchdowns. Christian Watson gets the yardage sometimes. So to me, the most confident one is Josh Jacobs. If you want to take a chance on big playability, throw Christian Watson in. Jaden Reed just doesn't look the way he has looked. Now, New Orleans defense is not that bad, but also not that great. And we know Romeo Doubs, I said it last year, I'll say it again this year, he is kind of the relief valve for Jordan Love, and if he's pressured, he's going to go that way, and he's great red zone, end zone target. So I'd feel confident you flexing any of those guys, but I'm not sitting there in all confidence saying I have Jaden Reed as a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, Watson being a wide receiver 2, because they can just end up getting very little target share and not score a touchdown, and you'd be not happy in your semifinal match going to the championship. That's all for your starts and sits here for Week 16. If you have any questions, drop a comment. We'll be happy to get back to you as soon as possible with the advice that we would do if we were the ones managing your team. If you have not yet done so, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell so you get all the notifications for our channel moving forward. And at the end of the day, good luck. Hope you win. May you get it to your championship, bring home the trophy and the cash and whatever other perks you get from winning. As always, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.